Now, does the government, though, in any case, wear some odium for the way in which it was done? It's all sort of fairly brutal politics. Tony Abbott, of course, said that he would never have done something like this. Here he is.
I just don't do that kind of thing. It's not my style. This kind of Machiavellian ruthlessness, this deployment of the Sussex Street death squads, it's not me. And for all the ups and downs of politics on our side, Carl, I don't think it's the sort of thing that happens.
Yeah, good. Tony Abbott said during the 17 days period that he would do anything to get the job. Anything. Anyway.
I was going to say, wasn't that the guy that offered a hospital to Andrew Wilkie and pretty much anything the independents wanted?
Yeah, look, I guess so. But there has to be, I think where Tony Abbott really did nail it was where he made this contribution.
He's not my man. He's the Prime Minister's man now. It's what she makes of him. It's what she says about him, because now she's the one who has to defend him.
Well,
now, they can argue all they like that he's an independent, but the government put him there. That's the reality.
He is the public face of the government in the Parliament. Every day the Parliament sits, he will be in that chair and he will be the government's man. So the problem, I think, is not so much what Slipper has done in the past, although, you know, he is very much a tainted figure as a result of that, but the danger is what he might do in the future. And
the government's already making that distinction, talking about, well, he was your man before and you selected him 9 times and that sort of thing to the coalition.
Yeah, but it's not like they didn't know what sort of person Slipper was. I mean, they knew what they were buying, right? So they know what they're going to have to deal with. They know about the drinking. Slipper is the sort of person who can get very tired and very emotional, sometimes very early in the mornings. So they're going to have to hire...
They've made a punt, Dennis. I think it's worth the risk.
Well, they do think it's worth the risk. There are some members of the government who think that Peter Slipper's changed. I'm not entirely sure what they base that on. I think, you know, sort of watching him sort of walk around Parliament House with the Dalai Lama sort of has impressed some of them. But I think Nikki is absolutely right that any of Peter Slipper's past crimes, if they exist, it's a bit murkier because he was pre-selected 9 times by the National Party and Liberal Party and then the LNP in Queensland. You know, just 15 months ago, Tony Abbott stood next to him as the candidate for Fisher. So those things, it's the ownership of Peter Slipper. It looks more coalition than Labor. But anything he does from now on, if he makes a wrong move in any way at all, whether it's over how he conducts himself in his office or how he uses his entitlements, and the coalition will be watching him like, you know, 50 hawks at all times, then he will be the government's problem. In the same way Mel Colston ended up being John Howard's problem.
We'll get to Mel Colston in a moment. Have a look at the way that some of the newspaper headlines have treated this, though. The Daily Telegraph one, of course, the King Rat, and they mentioned there that it's a digitally altered image, which is very helpful to the readers to know that. The Financial Review, of course, a tabloid size, but not exactly tabloid in style, but they've gone the same thing, dirty, you know, talking about dirty deals and liberal turncoats and the whole thing. So, Karen, the coalition will have support in some sections of the media if they want to go for it.
Absolutely. Some in the government are saying, look, we're already copping a walloping from some sections of the media every day on all sorts of things, and they're actually saying they'd be happier to have a walloping over Peter Slipper than about immigration, for example. The other safety net, I suppose, that they have is now that he's the Speaker, he can't be directly attacked in Parliament. So that makes it slightly more complicated, pardon me, for the opposition. They have to attack him through the organs of the media and having evidence, if there is evidence of misdeeds brought forward in the media. They can't do it in the Parliament. I do think it's dangerous logic on the part of the government that they don't mind being attacked over Peter Slipper, because we don't really know what sort of things might be brought forward, and you know, they're only relying on this argument about past deeds being in the past.
Well, you mentioned... Sorry, Nikki, go on.
Well, and it's not like all those other issues are settled within the government, especially on the Malaysian solution. So they will have, you know, the Slipper problem on one hand, and they've still got quite serious policy issues on the other that they've got to deal with.
And that's just gone to a new level, and we'll get to that shortly as well. But Dennis, you mentioned Mel Colston in the 90s, and of course Mel Colston was persuaded to leave the Labor Party and then become Deputy President in the Senate, which suited the coalition at the time. And this is what Robert Ray had to say about Mel Colston.
And anyone who rats in the Labor Party will get exactly what this quisling Quasimodo from Queensland got.
So, can we expect the same sort of approach from the coalition? And who is there? Robert Ray? Is it George Brandis? Who's going to step up and do the work?
No, they don't have the mongrel. There's no John Faulkner and there's no Robert Ray in the Liberal Party prepared to do that. So I don't know how they think it's going to happen. And I think that the time to have destroyed Slipper was when he ratted, I think it was the second rat, and accepted the deputy speakership. That is when he should have been destroyed. And I don't think that really there's anything else that can come out now that will probably destroy him. But it's what he does from now on. I think that'll be the problem.
But then, of course, they let it drift, and having, I guess, stuck with him at that stage, then why didn't they then try and give him more security? What he wanted was a guaranteed pre-selection.
No one was going to guarantee him pre-selection. He'd lost the support of his branches after the 2010 election. No one was going to be able to save him. That was the problem.
And in the end, it was the branch members in Queensland who brought that to a head earlier last week. The leadership of the LNP in Queensland were quite happy to go along with what Tony Abbott and Brian Loughnane, the federal director of the Liberal Party, were asking them to do, which was keep a lid on it until at least after the state election, which is due probably March next year. However, after Kevin Rudd went up into the seat of Fisher and did a press conference with Peter Slipper standing next to him attacking Tony Abbott, the rank and file in Fisher went berserk, and they just put so much pressure on the LNP in Brisbane. They said, look, we can't control this. If we don't do it, they'll come and tear our house down.
So you're saying there's nothing Tony Abbott could have done, and that this idea that he was careless doesn't hold up?
Not really, no. I mean, he did try to keep a lid on it. Some people argue that he could have done more in terms of hugging Peter Slipper, and he could have called Alex Sumlier off, because Alex Sumlier has been attacking his Sunshine Coast colleague pretty regularly in the local media up there, and perhaps he could have, but he didn't. But he did try to keep a lid on it, but in the end, you know, people power prevailed.
And that Kevin Rudd visit was critical, and I'm told that it was not Slipper who invited Rudd, but Rudd invited himself, which he's sort of prone to do.
Well, Rudd has an interest in maintaining good relations with people who might become independents at some future time, right? So.
But Slipper played along with everything, and, you know, Slipper is sneaky and sleazy and all that, but he ain't stupid. So I think, in a way, he probably engineered you know, the whole situation and events that went to Thursday, and coincidentally the Labor Party was quite happy to go along with it.
Yeah, you could say he has got some rat cunning there.